bring people together so that we can begin the process of getting their contact details and then working from there to have more of such events so that the alumni becomes very lively and energetic, and then we can organize and form better programs and have a voice heard, because right now the alumni is disparate and we need to bring it together so that we get a voice heard.
Yeah.
This is a Franciscan community prayer, which I felt was so appropriate. It is a prayer that I've been sharing with my congregation members, and I'll continue to do so until it sinks into our hearts. And it goes like this. May God bless you with discomfort at easy answers, half-truths, and superficial relationships, so that you may live deep within your heart. May God bless you with anger at injustice, oppression, and exploitation of people, so that you may work for justice, freedom, and peace. May God bless you with tears to shed for those who suffer pain, rejection, hunger, and war, so that you may reach out your hand to comfort them and to turn their pain to joy. And may God bless you with enough foolishness to believe that you can make a difference in the world, so that you can do what others claim cannot be done, to bring justice and kindness to all people, especially the vulnerable. And I think this is a big challenge. Those of us who are the top 1% privileged in this nation and even beyond. And I pray in the name of God the Father, God the Son, and God the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Mr. Special Guest, Speaker, Ministers of State, Member of Parliament, the Deputy Rector, Deans, Panelists, SRC President, fellow alumni, ladies and gentlemen. As President of the Gimpa Alumni Association, it is my very great pleasure to welcome you all to your alma mater. This alumni event has been much awaited. I am not sure that many of us can last remember when a concerted effort was made to bring us all together like this, after the time with the President event a couple of years ago at Aliza Hotel. However, with the help of our Gimpa Corporate Affairs Alumni Office and the support of the Gimpa Student Representative Council Executive, here we are at last for the first Gimpa Alumni Homecoming Lecture and networking event. We are most grateful to the Rector for providing a functional office, highly qualified and experienced professionals dedicated to the cause of alumni project. We extend a gracious welcome to our guest speaker, the Honorable Minister Mahama Yariga, the Minister for Information, and thank him for finding the time to come and speak to us today about tertiary education and its impact on the economy of the nation. As a former Deputy Minister of Education, we are very much convinced that he has a lot to share. The panel discussion and question and answer session that follows would hopefully get us all contributing to this important topic. A significant part of this evening's programs will be devoted to networking and socialization. After all, what is the point of a homecoming event if you do not seize the opportunity to renew old friendships and to see how much your beloved institution has changed over the years? Following the lecture program, our SRC are hosting a get-together with live band music, food and drinks, well into the night. Of course, if you have the energy, we would like to see you at the Gimpa Clubhouse. And it will not be remiss to say We trust that as you enjoy the refreshment and spend time smoozing around, you will respond to our call to think about making some form of contribution to your Gimpa, my Gimpa, our Gimpa. Without your precious funding and support, our Alumni Association will lack the vibrancy that you will all bring with your presence. So take a moment to renew your membership and give us your contact details if you have not been in touch for a while, so that we can build a reliable contact database to make events like this regular on the Gimpa calendar. On behalf of the Gimpa Alumni Executives, I would like to say a very welcome to all of you. Let me also take this opportunity to announce also that the current Gimpa Alumni Executives have been around for quite a while, and it is our wish that we will attempt to open up nominations for all those who are very happy to help the development of alumni to the next milestone, to pick up nominations and contest for the national executive elections, which we will discuss very soon. You are very much welcome. Thank you.
I'd like to welcome you all, especially our distinguished guests, those of you who have found time in your busy schedules to get here in time for the program today. And I hope you'll all join me in welcoming our honorable guest speaker, the Honorable Minister Mahama Ayariga, who is Minister of Information. As was mentioned, he's a former Deputy Education Minister, and therefore, as you will expect, we'll have a lot to say about our topic this evening. Please join me in giving a warm round of applause to Mr. Ayariga.
The Deputy Rector, who is supposed to be here, President of the Alumni Association, lecturers who are here, distinguished students, ladies and gentlemen. It is an irony and an interesting one that today I have been invited to come and deliver a lecture on the occasion of the inauguration, I believe, of Gimpa Alumni. I'm saying an irony because a couple of years ago, I made a very spirited attempt to be a student of this institute. It never saw the light of day. I attended lectures for a few weeks. But the difficulty of combining my job then as a presidential spokesperson and an executive MBA student dawned on me a few weeks after I started the program. My mates have since completed, and I have not yet been able to come back to continue the program. Just this evening when I arrived here, the authorities told me that they still have my records and I'm welcome to come back at any time. I believe that when I do come back and manage to successfully go through the program, and I'll be more qualified to come and deliver this alumni lecture. But during the period when I could not make it as a student, fate also has it that I was sent to the Minister of Education when I left the presidency. First to become Minister of Trade and Industry, and then subsequently to Minister of Education. And at the Minister of Education, I handled the portfolio in charge of tertiary education. And during that period, I had the opportunity to engage with the tertiary education sector or subsector of the entire educational system. And that gave me some insights, and I believe that much of what I'll be speaking to this evening relates to my own observations and appreciation of the subsector. I'm not speaking from any notes, and I've explained to the organizers that I got the information to deliver this lecture quite late. And the whole week I was preoccupied with coordinating the debate on the budget, which was read last week. But nevertheless, I accepted the challenge to come and deliver this lecture. I think first and foremost, it will be important to have some appreciation of what our tertiary education subsector looks like. We have, of course, a mixture of both private and public provisioning of tertiary education. At the level of the universities, you have now, I think, about 9 public universities. And at the last count, we had more than 30 or 40 private universities in this country, spread across the country. Many of them are well-established universities. Others are affiliates of well-established universities. But we also have the polytechnics. And in each region we have one polytechnic. And many of the polytechnics now also have degree programs which they award in certain specific areas. We recently transformed our teacher training colleges into colleges of education. And so they also are tertiary institutions now. Now, in terms of numbers, when you put the numbers together, we have about 170,000 people in the tertiary education subsector, which is very significant. The governance structure is something that I think will interest most people. For our tertiary education subsector, we have a governance arrangement that is inspired by our constitution. Our constitution aspires to create a situation where universities as academic institutions are free of governmental control in terms of content, intellectual freedom. And that inspires the structure of public institutions, the governance of public institutions. So as much as possible, the governance structures of public institutions, universities, are free of governmental control. Of course, they are all established by acts of parliament, and they have a governance arrangement where membership of their councils are largely institutional representation. And also, you have what I call internal constituency representation. So you have the students' representative, you have the teachers' unions, you have the workers' unions, and they all form part of the governance structure of the universities. I recall that when I was deputy minister, it came up for discussion one day in Parliament. And on that occasion, there was what I thought was a bipartisan appreciation of the challenge. This constituency-based design of the governance institutions creates a lot of problems. And I'll get to some aspects of it later, but immediately what I can say is that you have governance structures that are dominated and controlled by internal university structures. And very often it creates quite some governance problems for the universities. At the same time, it also creates governance problems for governments that are working with the universities. But more importantly, and I'll get to that later as I indicated, it creates problems for a situation where you are trying to get a style of government, of governance of a university that is not too inward looking. And we will get to that later on. But for now, I think that we need to seriously review the structure of public university governance arrangements because of this overbearing nature where you have internal constituency representation, sometimes with very little external input, so that it provides for innovation and provide for the wider world to impact on the design of the programs and curricula of these universities. So that is it for governance. The private universities, of course, they have their own unique governance arrangements. The most important thing is that they must go through the approval processes of the National Accreditation Board and also are subject to the supervision of the National Council for Tertiary Education. The subject for this evening's discussion is tertiary education and its impact on the economy of the nation. I've given you what I believe to be a very brief overview of what our tertiary education looks like. The universities, as you will all know, are higher level, providing degree programs, masters, and now many of them are providing PhD programs. The polytechnics initially designed to provide middle-level manpower, more technical skills for industry because of the complaint the industry had some time ago of the mismatch in terms of skill sets between the products of universities and what industry really was looking for. The College of Education basically are looking at training teachers to populate the classrooms at the basic level of education. And so that basically is the structure. Now, how does tertiary education impact on the economy of a nation? I think there's really no doubt about the fact that the size and the quality of tertiary education has a direct relationship with economic development. There's no doubt about that. There's been some debate about the relative impact in terms of pre-tertiary and tertiary. I'm not an economist, but I know that there's been a lot of writing that suggests that basic education has a higher rate of social return for the entire economy and society relative to higher education, which has a greater rate of return to the individual relative to the entire society. And that's why the World Bank and development agencies will push for greater investments in basic education and push for it to be free, whilst in the case of tertiary education, the argument is that given the higher rate of return to the individual, then perhaps the individual should also contribute significantly to acquiring that level of individual development, whilst for the higher levels of social return that we obtain from basic education, then all of us should make it freely accessible to everybody because we all benefit from it. Beyond this debate, and also one can study countries and the trajectory of their development and do the analysis relative to their levels of tertiary education. I believe that this requires a more in-depth study than what a lawyer can do. But if we just look at our tertiary education as it is and try to relate it to its impact on our economic development, I think that there are a number of things that we can look at. One is, what is the level of our economic development? Or we can take the different levels of our economic development and our social development and our political development and assess the impact of tertiary education on these. I mean, one major challenge of African countries and Ghana historically has been establishing a stable, peaceful, democratic country. And that is defined by our governance style. And we've gone through military regimes, we've gone through democratic elections. Finally, somewhere in 1992, we had one, and thank God that one still subsists and is deepening every day. There's no doubt that the level of education of the country and the level of tertiary education does have an impact on the building of democratic culture, the building of a culture of free speech, building of a culture of tolerance, the building of a culture of national unity and the need to cohabit peacefully, and the building of a culture of participating in governance, and also having a high quality of people leading your country. There's no doubt that there is a bearing in terms of your quality and level of tertiary education. So I think that partly what we're experiencing in terms of the stability of our country and our high political culture that people commend us all over the world has some connection with our level of education in terms of tertiary institutions and what they are training us to become, how they are molding us on a daily basis. I want to also look at our economic development. I mean, we are moving largely from an agriculture-dominated economy to a service-dominated economy. And if you look at the service sectors and you see the growth poles and you see the drivers of the growth, you find out that something like tourism industry, the financial sector, especially these days, are all really driving the growth in the service sector. And these are sectors that depend largely on human beings, not necessarily, not like, mining that really relies largely on equipment and other infrastructure. But the banking sector, the tourism sector, they are high employers, and they rely on the level of, high quality human resource base to be able to provide those services. And I think that there's clearly a direct bearing in terms of the quality and level of the development of our tertiary education and the expansion that we are seeing in the services sector. However, I think also that given my own assessment of the situation when I was at the Ministry of Education, there are areas of our economy that are lagging behind, and I will attribute that to the low level of support that they are receiving from our tertiary institutions. Industry depends so much on innovation. They depend so much on research and development of new products which they would produce and market and make money. Unfortunately, industry hasn't done so well in our country, and part of that is because of the disconnect between industry and our tertiary institutions, and that is also related to the very low investment that we are making in research and development. So we are not that good in terms of, innovating, developing new products, and helping industry to accelerate in terms of its development and contribution to the economy. And so this is an area that tertiary education needs to rethink. Even though there was some effort to provide some research allowance to universities so that they can make some meaningful contribution in the area of research and development. I mean, that kind of money can't support any serious research. I mean, even if you give a lecturer $1,000 a month, it just won't support any serious research work. In the countries where there's been a lot of progress, I mean, a significant share of GDP goes into research. If you give lecturers a few $1,000s every month and think that, it would really contribute significantly to research and development, I mean, it's a big joke. Maybe it helped with individual income. Maybe it helped with basic things to do when you are trying to do research. But in terms of what a nation needs for accelerated economic development, that approach to research doesn't work. And that is why the ministry has been in discussions with universities, and there's an agreement to rethink that whole arrangement and to rather establish a more coordinated national research program where a lot more money is put into a fund, and lecturers will come with proposals, and the proposals will be funded, and the product can ultimately become an important contribution to national development. So when it comes to the services sector, tertiary education has played a major role, or is playing a major role. But when it comes to industry, especially in the area of research and development, there still remains significant challenges that tertiary education will have to address itself to. Now, beyond these sectors, I think that there are other areas that we should look at in terms of the potential of tertiary education to play an important role in development. I have always said that now we are targeting to have a university in each region. Eastern region is still outstanding. Which other region apart from Eastern region? I think it's the only region that is really outstanding now, because Volta has one, Brongahafo has one, Shanti region already has several. I mean, University of Ghana, Greater Accra has several universities, Central region, all the regions now have Upper East, Upper West, Northern region. We have UDS with campuses on in each of these regions. So we'll say that perhaps those constitute separate university facilities in those three regions. Now, when you have a university in a region, I think that there's a lot of potential in terms of what the university can do to impact on the economic development of that region. Because policy formulation, policy implementation, monitoring